Welcome back to MJ Mixed Adventures. I'm Jamin.
And I'm Mike. So, all right, today we are finally doing the long-awaited RNG versus MSC versus stock clutching on the stage one. So, I'm excited to see what happens here today. I'm not 100% sure. So let's get started. What do you guys say?
Yeah.
So we are finally done testing both clutch kits and some absolutely amazing and interesting results. And I'm glad I get to share these with you. So what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a general synopsis of all the testing that we did. So we did a top speed, a belt temp, an engagement point, and then 0 to 30 and quarter mile. And the reason I pulled the 0 to 60 out was originally I was going to use 0 to 60, but I realized that pretty much every time I was trapping in the quarter mile between 60 and 63 miles an hour. So I felt it probably wasn't an overly necessary point. And if people would like me to do that testing, I'll gladly do it. It's just one of those things I was like, doesn't seem to really change the overall results here. We're also going to talk about the smoothest of each clutch, maximum RPMs, and then also I even went in and got to the point where I even weighed every single one of the weights, the actual spring weight itself, and going from there, basically. So let's talk about top speed. So with MSC, 68 mile an hour top speed with the stage one kit in. Now, mind you, again, I do not have the stage two spring or the helix in yet. That is coming in part 3, so stay tuned. 68 mile an hour top speed with this spring in at 8,250 RPM is what I was running it at. With the RNG spring, 67 mile an hour top speed, but at much lower, by basically 1,000 RPM at 7,250 RPM. But the one thing I will notice about this spring is it would not let me peak over that 67 miles an hour. Basically got there and stayed there. Where I'm not sure with RNG's kit is it a necessity to run their helix. I know after speaking to MSC, they strongly recommended that I run the helix as well to help give me a little more on that top end. Now, the stock spring, I could trap that one out at 70 miles an hour, pretty much on the dot every time. And it just nosed over at 7,250 RPM and stayed there. Now let's talk about belt temps, because I know that was a hot topic. All belt temps were received by a laser, or one of those little infrared guns you can buy. That's what I ended up doing. The belt temp for the MSC, I ended up receiving, and now mind you, I will preface that today it was around 37 degrees today, so not a super warm day at all to work in. But belt temps for the MSC was 156.4, and to be fair, I want to let everyone know these are after running 5 back-to-back quarter mile times from a dead stop, obviously, and just ringing the machine out. Get to the end of it, turn around, and shoot straight back the opposite direction over and over again. So these tests are not being used as, an overall preface of exactly how the belt's going to perform in the end. It's just, this is what I received while I was testing, and I thought it was kind of important to show. So 156.4 for the MSC spring. The RNG spring was at 172.2. And the stock spring was at 168.4. Now let's talk about engagements. Engagement speed of both of these springs. The engagement speed that I was receiving from MSC was 1,850 RPM. The RNG, I will give a little nod to this one actually. It was at 1,750 and it was slightly smoother. I think if you're probably doing, you know what, we're going to hold that to the end. The stock spring was at 2,100 RPM. Now, let's get into 0 to 30 and quarter mile times. Now, I want to preface, I was originally going to do a 0 to 60 test, but I realized that pretty much every time I was trapping in the quarter mile was almost always 62, 63, 64, in that general ballpark. So with the MSC, I was receiving a 0 to 30 time of 2.54 seconds as an average over 5 runs, and a 17.32 quarter mile time. RNG was a 2.86 second 0 to 60 time, 0 to 30 time, with a quarter mile of 18.08. Stock, the 0 to 30 average was 3.6 seconds and a 17.74 quarter mile time. So now let's get into the engagements of both of them. Again, I know we spoke about engagement speed, but let's talk about actually how they feel. The RNG spring is definitely a little bit smoother. I don't feel that the MSC spring is a bad engagement. It's not rough or anything. You still get that generic clump that you get with all of them, or with the stock spring. This one takes it out. This one removes a lot of it and makes it smoother, but I will say you still do feel it. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that I noticed. It's not nearly as aggressive as the stock clunk when it finally engages, but you do feel a little when it goes in. So the other thing I'll talk about is the maximum RPM. So the MSC kit will max out at 8,250 RPM. It will hold the machine up there, and it's perfectly okay with doing it. The RNG spring is at 7,250 RPM, and this is one thing I noticed with the RNG spring. No matter what I did, it didn't matter. I ran the machine for about a mile and a half straight at wide open throttle, and I could not get it to peak over that 67 miles an hour at 7,250 RPM. It stayed locked in that spot and wouldn't move. Some people might care, some don't. Another thing, I've seen a couple comments about it with the MSC spring. They have a little sleeve, and I can grab that here. So the MSC kit does come with this little tiny sleeve or shim that goes on top of the spring. Did I notice any difference with it? I ran it both times with it on. I noticed that the getting it out was a bit of a pain, but I think if you're running the aftermarket belt like they talk about, it's probably well worth putting it in. And even if you're not, it's not really changing much. So is it worth it? I think it is. Another thing I wanted to cover in my last video, and I want to make a preface of this because I did speak to MSC as well. Their springs are covered or coated with a material from Vate Verico. I just wanted to verify that because in the last video, I had made the comment that I thought maybe they were unpainted or untreated or basically left as a raw steel. And I said, I had my concerns of that. That is not a situation with these. I have verified that. That's at least directly from them. Now, let's talk about overall what the weights were of these actual weights. And to be fair, I did weigh each and every single one of them. To be fair, I weighed each one of them. MSC came out at exactly 22 grams on all of their weights. All of them came out dead nuts right at 22 grams. The stock spring weight with the shim, because obviously they say to use it, so I weighed it with it, was at 172.9 grams for the spring weight. Moving on to the stock ones. The stock all measured exactly 20 grams stock with a 77.9 stock spring weight. Then when it comes to RNG, something that I noticed, and I don't think it's a massive difference. I'm not going to say not to get it because of this, but it was something. They're pretty much right at 20 grams, but 5 of the 6 weighed in at 19.9 grams, and 1 did weigh in at exactly 20 grams. The other thing, the primary spring weight is 85.2 grams, so it fits right in the middle. So I know a lot of people have some questions. They're still excited for the stage 3 test. It is coming. We are working on that this week. So definitely stay tuned. You know, all the normal stuff, you know, like, share, and subscribe. But, you know, we're definitely going to be working on the stage 3 kits here shortly this week. But so far, if I'm tallying up all of the stuff here, at least as of right this moment, we're looking at currently in a generic points value system. Currently, MSC is leading, and we're definitely going to do some more testing on the stage 3 kits. But currently, MSC is definitely kind of taking a lead with this Vate Verico system. I think it's working really well, at least in my driving style and my personal preference. A lot of people have asked me as well on Facebook and whatnot, of the 2 kits, which one would I prefer? And this is previous to testing both. And now, mind you, I've tested all 3 of these pretty much literally back to back. Pull in, take the cover off, swap springs, go out. I'm liking the way the MSC feels. I just like the engagement. I know there's a little clunk on the bottom. Is it a major ordeal for me? Not particularly. But I like the fact that it'll let the machine rev out. It pulls hard, and it definitely kind of squats coming off the line. It seems to put a little more transition in that lower end. And I'm hoping maybe once we get to the helixes, that fixes a lot of that too. So again, thank you for staying tuned, guys, and I appreciate your guys' support. Look forward to you guys in the next video. Thank you. Alrighty, guys, another thing I wanted to touch on. I had a commenter had mentioned a pretty interesting point that I actually didn't think of adding into this, and it was like cruise speed RPMs. Where are they falling? So I did test this on a 30 mile per hour speed and a 60 mile per hour speed. So I'm going to cover some of those results with you. Main Street Cycle and the Vate Verico kit came in at 30 miles an hour at 5050 RPMs, or 5,050 RPM. At 60 miles an hour, it was at 7,050 RPM. Now, moving over to Redneck Garage or RNG, at 30 miles per hour, it was at 4,800 RPM. And at 60 miles an hour, it was 6,450 RPM. With the stock setup, interestingly enough, what I'm seeing is Vate Verico spent some time tuning it. It looks like to get it really close to what the stock performance was, but at least in this area. So I'm going to cover this. At 30 miles an hour, it is at 5050 RPM. Ironically, same as Main Street Cycles. At 60 miles an hour, the stock setup is actually higher at 7250. And again, that's using the weights that come with the kit in the MSC trail kit for the stage 1, and also Redneck Garage's spring setup that they've got. So I just want to cover those as well in conjunction to the rest of the testing that we've already covered. I know that was a point. I'm kind of adding it in after, so I do apologize. Hey guys, wow, what some amazing results that we've come up with. And as close as the competition has been between the 2, I'm actually quite surprised. You know, listening to both sides, listening to feedback from different sides, different parties, and also just what people have been saying online. Really shocked at some of the results, and I hope you guys like it. Stay tuned for part 3, part 3 for the stage 3 clutch test tuning as well, where we'll be doing the secondary spring and the helix as well. Again, thank you all for watching, and remember to like, share, and
subscribe.
see you guys.